continue to introduce women at the CARICOM Secretariat who are working tirelessly, blazing trails and shattering glass ceilings as they work towards the goal of regional integration. Dawn Baldeo-Koylass has been with the CARICOM Secretariat for 3 decades. She holds the distinction of being its first female director of finance.
I am the director of finance, but first of all, I'm Dawn Baldeo-Koylass. Dawn to most, mom to 2 very handsome young men, and very proud to be so. And humbled to be a part of the CARICOM experience, and I have been a part of that experience for quite some time. I've been with the Secretariat for 30 years, 3 decades. It's been great in several ways, because what I can say is that I chose to be a certain way over the 30 years. I am not being proud. I am not being haughty, but I chose to remain principled because my job demands it. And I believe hard work is the way. Hard work, smart work, but not little work and much reward. Hard work, reward comes from hard work. I believe that. It's one of my values. It's probably old-fashioned. It probably has no place in the modern world. But I still hold on to it because at the end of the day, I believe it matters. You do your work honestly. You try to be as proactive as you can be. You try to learn new skills because one, it keeps you young, that's for sure. It keeps you relevant, and it keeps you very in tune with growing. Well, I don't have teenagers anymore, growing young men in their 20s. So you've got to get with it. You've got to get with it. And I mean that in the best possible way. Get with it in your own training. Doesn't have to be training which is in a classroom. It could be training via webinar, via finding out where will the accounting profession be in another 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Those are areas which I always, I keep very close to my consideration and action.
She is, of course, proud of her achievements and the glass ceilings that she has shattered.
Again, I'm humbled. I mean, you make a big thing about the director of finance. Of course, I'm proud of that. It was hard work. It still is hard work because you're working hard in a different way. You're working hard for maintaining standards. You're working hard for change. You're working hard for improved strategy. You're working hard for pushing against a tide, which sometimes is not always a good tide. But you have to push against the tide when it's necessary. And I like that analogy. I like that visualization. You push against the tide because you want to keep principles, you want to keep standards, and so on.
At school, she leaned towards the sciences and loved foreign languages. Her intention after leaving school, however, was on heading to the London School of Economics, where she'd already been accepted. But the chairman of Booker's, Mr. Paul Chanasu, employed her as an audit clerk and steered her towards accounting.
Having left school, I got an offer from the Bank of Guyana. and they offered me a lot of money as someone leaving school at A-levels. And I remember my father not knowing all the nuances of how education ought to unfold, but he wants the best for his daughter, of course. And he asked his boss to speak with me. I remember Paul Chanasu calling me, and he said, "Oh, young lady, you have left school, so what are your plans?" And I said, "Oh, I want to do economics. I am going to the London School of Economics. I had applied, was accepted." And then he said, "But Dawn, are you going to teach or lecture? What do you want to do?" And he came from a physics background, and he became a chartered accountant. And I have great respect for him as a professional and as a very supportive supervisor. So he was the chairman then of the Bookers Enterprise. And he said to me, "Look, I want you to go to the internal audit department on Monday morning. You will be getting a little salary, but you will be an audit clerk. And then within a year, how you perform, we'll see about getting you moving into accountancy." And in retrospect, it had to have been the goodness of his intervention that really put me onto the path of accountancy. He probably saw something there that I didn't recognize. And so LSE was put on hold because my parents would have had to sell their home to send me there. And that was not, a reasonable prospect. But here it was, an offer being made. Join as an internal audit clerk and let's see how you do. And then I began to get myself into this accounting thing. I went to some classes, LCC classes. I had A-levels, but I went to LCC, elementary, intermediate, and higher. And I did those in about 6 months. And I said, wow, this thing is kind of interesting. It's kind of easy. So together with his allowing me to join the department, internal audit as a clerk, for $300 kind of dollars, of which I had to save 25 every month. As an instruction, as against the $900 that the central bank was offering me. I'm glad I said no to that job.
She qualified abroad as an accountant, completing her exams months before her 21st birthday, and returned to Guyana.
And served the government for 5 years, went back to the internal audit department of the Geistar Group and got some real solid experience for some months, and then went across to the management accounting department. And I left there as the chief accountant, which was quite some accomplishment at that time. And my parents were quite proud. And at one point, the structure was one where I actually was the indirect supervisor for both parents. That you might think is a conflict of interest, but not directly. And they retired shortly afterwards. So their pride in my accomplishments created an assurance in me, or a confidence, which I think I have taken throughout my career. My father always said, you belong here. You are driving on the road. You belong. You have a space on the road. And so, the confidence and the self-confidence that a father gives to a daughter, young men out there, it's very important. It makes whatever you call it, the glass ceiling breaking, so much easier and so much less of a or shattering experience. Glass ceiling breaking or shattering experience, there's again my visualization. No, but your parents do imbue in you a lot of what you become. And that's very critical. Very critical.
She believes in family, hard work, and a willingness to learn.
I cannot say anything about myself without being very appreciative and thankful to my parents. Very fortunate to have had parents who, from very humble economic beginnings, ensure that I got the best that they could afford. And in terms of education, in terms of, certainly not in terms of the material things, because that was not possible, but in terms of the education, the simple thing, my mother buying a book for me every week, and as a grown woman working, buying the Newsweek and the Times Magazine for me. I mean, I'm a working woman, so why is she buying these things for me? But she thought that reading meant a lot, and she wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. Reading, I would even, in our discussion now, I would really say that young women read. Cut back on the TV a bit, but read. Read everything you can find. It helps your articulation, it helps your technical writing, it helps everything. But read as much as you can. I don't have regrets. I'll tell you why. Because with every different opportunity, with every different decision would have come something else. I came to the Secretariat as a young person because I wanted more experience, and of course I wanted to work for more money. And that is not anything bad in itself, honestly. But what would I have done differently? I got married. I would not have changed that for the world. I'm blessed with 2 sons. I would not change that for the world. In fact, I would have wanted about 8. But practically speaking, that is a bit maddening. I could have gone to another international organization, interviewed for the post, and then I remembered, but who will take care of my children when I am working for this more money? And really, it sounds old-fashioned, but I wanted my children to have the experience of their grandparents. So to have done something differently, maybe if I could have had my parents moving to that part of the world with me, I would have gone along with them so that my children wouldn't have lost the opportunity of the experience of living with grandparents. Because living with grandparents is a very critical thing. It's not taken very seriously now, but grandparents have the patience that parents do not have. Grandparents have the wisdom that parents do not have. And if parents recognize those 2 things, they will know that their children have the best opportunity not to be alienated from their grandparents, but to be close to their grandparents.
An accomplished musician who plays the violin, Dawn carves out time to share her talent during the annual staff talent celebrations of the CARICOM Secretariat.
Music is a part of my life. At one time, I wanted to be a finance controller in the music industry. And then, the choices got pretty narrow. I have been a musician for many, many years, from childhood actually, and I enjoy that. It tends to go well with the figures in some way. My playing softly jazz classics, or even the more modern classics, jazz classics, saxophone classics. It really helps creativity, my concentration, getting my deadlines. So I'm not saying that that's a prescription, but it helps me. And so I keep music. It helps to keep me sane sometimes in the wild world of work.
In retrospect, would she have done anything differently?
I wouldn't change too much, other than if I had the opportunity to take my music with my accountancy into some work environment. But that's not always possible. And you've got to recognize that days go by, time goes by, and you've got to treat life as a continuum. It's not an arrival at a point. So wherever you are, you've got to make the best of it. You've got to make the best of it. So if you're challenged, you turn those challenges into opportunities. You turn those challenges into benefits, or to set the framework for something better. It's never a perfect world. I have not made perfect decisions. I'm still a work in progress as a human. So for whatever glass ceilings I've broken, I am glad. I am proud that it made my parents proud, and I hope that I can, whatever, show the path to my children, which would help them to avoid any pitfalls. That is what some of us parents do, try to avoid their children making pitfalls, which sometimes is not a good thing. They need to make the mistake to learn the lesson.
Yes.
You learn to learn the lesson.
Continue to stay tuned to our social media platforms for the next in our series on women at the CARICOM Secretariat.